Hello and welcome to the ScWelsh Man Gaming. We are going to be doing a nice little board game review of Strange Worlds Above the Clouds, which is published by BlackRock Games and distributed by Hachette Boardgames Uk. In this lovely little game, it is a drafting game with a tableau building element. Can be played between 1 to 4 players and takes about 15 minutes to play. In this game, we have some components that we will go through and how to set the game up. So first off, we have some cards along the top, which are Dark Citadels, Thermal cards, Portal cards, which is also known as Travelers, and the direction in which we're going to be drafting. We also have our score pad, which we will use at the end of the game to score how many points we have built. We have play raids that are double-sided, and if you're playing with less players, you can keep 2 together to be able to see everything that you need in one go. And then we also have our starting cards, which we will use at the start of the game. So depending on the number of players that you have, you will shuffle these, deal 1 to each person, and then this will be your starting card at the beginning of the game. So at the beginning of the game, you will have this 1 card, and when it comes to placement, we will be placing orthogonally adjacent to this card, up, down, left and right. We'll come on to that in a little bit. First off, I'd like to go through how we are going to be doing placement rules. Now, in most drafting games, we know how to draft. I will come on to the drafting element in a second. I think that the more important bit is how we are going to be placing our cards and avoiding world eaters coming into our world and destroying our tableau. So, in Strange World Above the Clouds, when you are placing your cards, as I say, you will play them orthogonally adjacent, and we have some rules that we need to follow. The first one is to do with portal cards that trigger travelers. So on the card, you will see that is 2 portals, or 2 halves of a portal, in which we need to place a second half down to be able to trigger a traveler to come through that portal. We'll come on to travelers later on. For now, when we are placing, we can place them next to each other. And if we were to place a second one, we would be able to get a traveller. And then on any future turn, including the one that we're currently on, if we were to play another card that also had a portal, making a second portal, we would trigger a World Eater. This is basically saying that if we have 2 travelling portals that are connected in one row, that a World Eater will appear. So you don't get the benefit of getting a second traveller. Instead, you would flip the card over to its World Eater side, and that card is no longer of use to us. Nice and simple. The next way we can be doing this is with water. So if we have water cards and we were to play a second water card directly next to, and again this can be in any direction, up, down, left or right, we will trigger a World Eater. So if this were to happen, the card that we would place would be turned upside down, and then we would have a World Eater instead, and that again is shown on the little play raid with 2 water symbols. The next one we have is to do with swamps. So when it comes to swamps, if we were to have 1 swamp in our tableau, and then we were to have a second swamp appear in the same row, unfortunately the second swamp would trigger a World Eater card, and so we would turn it over. This, importantly, doesn't count for if we are doing it in columns. We can have it in columns, that's completely fine. It is only if it is in the same row as an existing swamp would we turn this over, and again this is shown on the player raid card. The last one is a different sort of scenario when it comes to moons. So with moons like to be played above on the top row. If moons are ever placed underneath, then we would cause a World Eater to come out, and the World Eater would simply destroy that moon. And that again is shown by here, that if we are placing a card underneath, that it becomes a World Eater. That, for the majority of it, is all we need to worry about when it comes to placements. Going on to scoring points, again, on our play raid, it shows us how we are scoring points. So first is mountains, and so for every 2 mountains at the beginning, we would get 1 point. So in this scenario, we have 2 mountains, we're currently scoring 1 point. For every subsequent mountain that we're able to place that is still in one group, for every icon on our cards, we would take an extra point. So in this case, we have 2 mountain symbols here, which would get us 1 point. And if we were to follow a trail, this would be 2 points, this would be 3 points, and this would be 4 points. Then we come to water cards. When it comes to water cards like to be surrounded on different sides. So if we had this as an example, we would get 1, 2, 3, because we've got 3 different cards surrounded. If we have a World Eater, we wouldn't score the point for where the World Eater card is. If, however, it was a legal placement, there we go, a legal placement, we would count that in as well. So it'd be 1, 2, 3, and 4 points. Again, if this was placed into a corner instead, it wouldn't count the 2 sides that it's missing. It would just count 1 and 2 where we have legal placement. In our next example, I have just pre-populated the mat a little bit so we can have a bit of a better look. So as we've already covered is mountains and water. The next one is to do with the grasslands, which is for creatures. So this is saying that we get 2 points for every different creature we have in our tableau. So we would simply go along and have a look, and we would count out every single creature that is different. So we have a snake for 2 points, we have a mouse for another 2 points, we have a little billy goat for another 2 points, would be at 6. We have this creature here that would give us 8, and this creature here that would give us 10, but then every other creature that we have remaining is already on the board, so we wouldn't count them. So currently we would have 10 points as an example in this tableau. We'll skip the next one and we'll come straight on to moons, because moons are quite interesting. So for the moon cards, it is saying that we're getting 2 points for every symbol that we have underneath them, and this will go along for every single row that we have moons in. So in this example, we have 2 points for having a mountain, 2 points for having a grassland, and another 2 points for having wetlands, for having water. So we would have 6 points in this column. And then we would look at the next one and we would have another 2 points for swamps, and we would get another 2 points for having grasslands. So in total we would have 10 points for our moons. Some important placement rules. Coming back onto placement is our volcanoes, which we haven't really discussed yet. So when placing a volcano, you would place it down and then you would choose any card that it becomes adjacent to, and you would put a ephemeral card on. So in this example, if we were to create a ephemeral card down here, that card gets destroyed and we wouldn't get any benefit from it. The benefit of doing this is if you were able to have several volcano cards. Let me just find a second one so we can have an example. So if we were to play a second volcano card, we would play a second ephemeral card adjacent. So importantly, I can place this over a volcano if I wish. That is completely fine. I can place it above. I cannot place it to the side where there is no card, and if this was the end of my tableau, it wouldn't be a legal placement. But I can place this one down here. If I was in a situation, however, where there was no legal placement, so if this card was a World Eater and this card did not exist, and for some reason I wasn't able to use this one, possibly also a World Eater, if I have no legal placement to place a ephemeral card, the card itself will become a World Eater and flip over. But in this situation, we're not doing that. So I have a legal placement and I can put that ephemeral card on another card below here. Once that happens, this is where we talked about the Dark City cards. That's where they come into play. So the Dark City cards have values on them starting from 9, then we have a 7, a 5, and then 2 4s. So you are very limited for how many of these you can get in a game, and the value does decrease as the game goes on. So if you were able to get 2 next to each other, you'll be able to place this in between, connecting the 2 lands together, and you will score these points at the end of the game. Importantly, you can also do this if a ephemeral card was going up and down. So you would be able to place this one here, And just again, if you're able to make a connection of another 2 firm roll cards, you would then be able to place another Dark City card, like so. So that is your Dark Cities. Your next one, if we go back to our play raid, is now Travellers. So Travellers is the one thing that we skipped over earlier on. So if we reset back to being able to get our Travellers out, so if we were to be able to create a Traveller, we would come to the Travellers deck. So we have a deck of Travellers at the side of the board. You would flip over the top one and you would apply its effect. So all Travellers get you 5 points regardless at the end of the game, and then you have some scoring conditions. So generally, when you place down your portal, you will choose which side you will place your cards on. So this could be on the right hand side or the left hand side. It doesn't count towards your tableau size, and you cannot then put any cards past where a Traveller has been placed. So if it was earlier in the game and we had a situation like this, if I were to place it on the right hand side, I can no longer continue to place new cards on the right hand side, such as the same if I were to do it on the left hand side. So it does sort of push you in a direction in which you will be playing your tableau and building your tableau going forward. There are secondary effects. A lot of them will say if you have more than a certain amount of a terrain type, you get an additional 5 or 6 points. So this one, it would be looking for the volcano cards. We've just gotten rid of the thermal rolls, and it will count if you have more than 3 thermal roll cards in one of these 2 rows, because importantly, when you place these, you aren't place them directly adjacent, you are placing them where the little arrows are showing, and so it will be covering 2 different rows, a top row and a bottom row that it will be looking to score from, which is really interesting. So now that we have discovered how we're going to score all the points and what things are making World Eaters, it's actually time to play a round. So we would have our direction in which we will be drafting. Now this can be randomized at the start of the game if you want to be drafting clockwise or anti-clockwise. You will give everyone 3 cards which they will have in their hands. They will have a look to see which cards that they wish to choose. They will keep 1 card and they will place the rest to their opponent. They would then take the next pile that comes to them and do the exact same, and you continue until you've drafted 3 cards. So in this situation, if these are the 3 cards that I've drafted, it now comes to placement. So you will still do this in turn order, and it becomes important for if people are getting Dark Cities and if they are getting Travellers, for which ones go to which players. So in turn order, you can do it a little bit quicker by doing some things simultaneously. You just want to be watching out for in case we are triggering anything. So in turn order, you would simply start playing your cards down into your tableau where you feel that they would work best. And so if I were to play mine like this, I would obviously like to have my moon, hopefully what becomes my top row. And then after that, we would come back to the direction, we would change the direction, and we would draw another 3 cards. And then we would again pick which one we are drafting, and we'll pass now to the opposite direction. Once you've done this until your 4x4 tableau is complete, the game comes to an end and we come on to the scoring. So again, we had a look earlier, but just to run through on the actual little score track, we would put your names along the top, we would score for mountains, then we would score for wetlands, we would score for our swamps, we would score for unique creatures, we would score for our points underneath the moon, depending on the different symbols that we have. We would then score for our Dark Cities, and lastly, we would then score for our Travellers. Add all these up, and we get our final scores at the end, and see who has won and who has lost. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you very much.